Good day, everybody. I hope that you're well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade kindergarten to 2 English lesson on action verbs. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once we've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of English language arts. We're doing grade kindergarten to 2, and then we're going to scroll down up until we get to our chapter of action verbs. All right, so our chapter is action verbs. Our subject is English language arts. We're doing grade kindergarten to 2, and the lessons that we are going to be focusing on under the chapter of action verbs is to use action verbs and also to identify action verbs. That is going to be our lessons for today. All right, so when it comes to action verbs, right? Remember, action or let's say verbs are basically doing words. It tells us the action that the noun does. And remember, a noun, it names people, it names places, it names things, it names animals. So if we were to talk about the action that the noun does, then of course it means that it's the action that either a person or an animal does, right? And we are going to first look at a few examples of action verbs, and then we will identify action verbs on our own, as well as we're going to try and use action verbs to also build a sentence, right? Or to make a sentence. So, once again, action verbs, and it tells you what the noun does. It is the action that the noun does, or another word we can say is a doing word. It's something that you are doing, something that the animal is doing, right? The action that either you or an animal does. And if we look at an example, right, of an action verb, it says she ate an apple. So she ate an apple, right? And if we were to identify the action that tells us what she did, then we can say ate. Because what did she do? She ate an apple. If you look at the next sentence, it says, we smile. We smile. So if we were to identify what we do, then what are we doing? We smile. So if we were to identify the action verb within that sentence, it tells us what we are doing, then it's a smile. That is the action, something that we are doing, right? We smile. All right. And before we go on to identifying action verbs within a sentence, right? Can we first identify certain action words? So action verbs. Can you think of any action verbs? So far we said ate, smile, action verbs. What other action verbs can you think of? Doing words. What is something that you're doing now? What is something that you're doing now while you are on A plus? What are you doing now? Anything that you're doing now. That is the action that tells us what you're doing. Like if I were to tell you the action verb that I'm doing currently, I am talking. So I can say I talk. So while I am the one that is talking, what are you doing? Don't add the ing. So if I talk, then what do you do? Or I speak, talk or speak, that is the action or the thing that I'm doing. Then we can maybe say that you listen, because that is what you're doing now. Listen. What is something that you maybe did this afternoon? Tell me what you did this afternoon. Something that you did this afternoon. Yes, well done. Play. That's something that you did. Listen. So without the ing, right? So we can say listen. Well done. What is something else that you did? What did you do before logging into A plus? What did you do? We can even say run is something that you did. Play is also an action verb. Listen is an action verb. Talk, speak. If you were to think of more action verbs, right? Things like action verbs are basically things that you did, right? If you go to the park, right, and you go on the jungle gym, then what do? You need to climb on something, right? If you are, let's say you are getting water, then what do you do with the water? So if you get water, then what do you do with the water? I'm not trying to make it more easier for you to come up with words. So run, yes, well done. We have climb. If you get water, if you get food, what do you do with the food? You get a chocolate, what do you do with the chocolate? Something that you do with that specific thing. One more word, that's something that you're doing. Yes, well done. So if you get food, for example, food, chocolate, anything, then we can basically say that you eat, right? Eat food, eat dinner, eat chocolate, or anything that you eat. The same like with water or cool drink, something that you get. What do you do with it? What do you do with it? So, for example, if you were to like get water or anything, then we can say drink, right? So basically, that is just like a few um examples of action verbs, things that you do. It's the action that tells us either what you are doing, what the next person is doing, what the animal is doing. If we can think of more action verbs, then we can even say dance is an action verb. You are moving, it's a movement, it's an action that you're doing, right? It's currently summertime in South Africa, so which means that most of us we go to the beach to swim, or we go to the pools and we basically swim, right? So swim is then also an action verb, right? Swim, it is something that you are doing because it's hot, right? To paint is an action verb. Painting is an action verb. Even having to think of the answers, it's an action verb. You are thinking because now you are doing something with your brain in order to generate or to get an answer. You think, right? What am I doing? I am talking, I speak, but another word is I teach, right? Or I tutor, that is the word, right? Other than you listening, we can say that you are learning, which means that you learn. So these are all action verbs that you can, these are things that you do, right? So an action verb, it tells you what the noun does. And what is the noun or who is the noun? You are the noun. Yes, well done. Walk is a noun, is the verb. Not slow, walk, right? So walk is the noun. Well done. It tells us what you are doing. It's a movement. It is an action that you are doing. Right? Well done. So now if we look at these sentences, right? these words. If you look at these words, try to come up with a sentence with one of these words. Try to create a sentence with one of these words. You're either going to make a sentence with talk, speak, listen, eat, play, drink, teach, dance, run, climb, swim, learn, walk, think, or paint. You need to come up with a sentence with one of those words. You need to make up a sentence, build a sentence, create a sentence with one of those words. If I can give you one example, right, then we can maybe say, I'm going to use the word think, right? Then I'm going to say that I think of the answer, full stop, or you can say I think of the answer before I respond, or before I say it, right? So I think of the answer before I respond, or I think of the question before I respond, or before I say the answer. So think, there we use the word think. You need to come up with another sentence. Make a sentence using one of these words. So you need to make a sentence with one of these words. If we think of another sentence, right, of one of the words, I'm going to use the words walk. I'm going to use the word walk. So we can maybe say James James walks to the shop. Well done. So walks or walk is our word. So whether it's walk or walks, but that is our sentence. Because remember, we are now basically just building sentences or making or creating sentences. So we can say James walks to the shop. Let's use the word run. I ran after the ball, right? Well done. If we were so run is a word, or let's say it's the verb or the action that basically tell us what we are doing. I ran after the ball. It tells us what the noun is doing. Right? All right. So now we are going to look at three sentences and then we are going to identify the action verb in that sentence. We are going to say what the noun is doing. It says mom painted my bedroom blue. So now we need to identify the action verb. What did mom do? So we need to say what did mom do? So mom painted my bedroom blue. We need to identify the action verb within that sentence. And if we were to identify the action verb within that sentence that tells us what mom is doing, then we can say paint is the action verb. Painted. Yes, well done. Paint or painted is the action verb within that sentence that tells us what mom is doing or what mom does. All right, so well done. Painted or paint is correct. The next one says my brother walked to school today. So my brother walked to school today. So my brother walked to school today. What did the brother do? And if we were to identify the action verb that tells us what the brother does, then we can say walked is the action verb. It tells us what my brother does. The next one says my sister builds toy airplanes. So my sister builds toy airplanes. So now we need to identify the action verb that tells us what my sister does. So what does my sister do? It says my sister builds toy airplanes. All right. And if we were to identify the action verb that tells us what my sister does, and we can say builds is something that tells us what my sister does. All right. So now, if we once again look at our action verbs, right, we identified some action verbs and we said that mom painted my bedroom blue. So, which means that painted is the action verb that we identified. My brother walked to school today. Walked is the action verb that we identified. And then my sister builds toy airplanes. Builds is the action verb that we identified, right? And then we also looked at more action verbs, which is talk and speak, listen, eat, play, drink, teach, run, dance, learn, swim, climb, paint, think, and walk. Those were a few action verbs that we basically looked at. We identified them together, right? And then we had to also create or build sentences. Because remember, the whole aim of also action verbs is not just for us to identify what we are doing or what we did, right? The action that tells us what the noun does, but it's also how to basically build a sentence. So well done. Builds is correct. All right, so now we're going to aplusstudents.ca and we're going to use action verbs and we're also going to identify action verbs within the sentences. And once again, an action verb, it tells you what a noun does. right? So an action verb, it tells you what the noun does. All right. So now let's look at this sentence over here. So we're going to identify, I'm going to write two words in a bracket, and then you're going to identify the action verb within the bracket, right? It says the young boy, do we say the young boy banged the toy blocks together loudly? Or do we say the young boy little the toy blocks together loudly? What is the correct words? Do we say that the young boy banged the toy blocks together loudly? Or do we say the young boy little the toy blocks together loudly? What is the action verb within that sentence? All right, and if we were to choose the correct option, then yes, we can say that the young boy banged. I'm gonna scratch it out. Banged the toy blocks together loudly. So banged is our correct action verb. It's the action that they did. They were banging the toys loudly. Well done. All right, we now are going to identify another word. I'm going to write two words in the bracket, and then you're going to choose the correct action verb. It says, my sister, do we say my sister cuts the apple pie into 8 pieces? Or do I say my sister best the apple pie into 8 pieces? Do we say best or cuts? If you look at the two words in the bracket, which one is correct? That tells us what the sister does. All right, then if we were to choose the correct option, then yes, cuts is correct. So my sister cuts the apple pie into 8 pieces. Well done. Cuts is correct. Well done. The next one, I'm gonna try and yeah. What is Dale doing? Do we say Dale? Do we say Dale whistles? Dale whistles while he cleans his room, or do we say Dale met while he cleans his room? What is the action verb? One of that two words must be an action verb that tells us what Dale does. And if we were to identify the verb or the action verb that tells us what Dale does, then we can say Dale whistles while he cleans his room. So whistles is correct. So now we're going to our test where we are going to use action verbs. And keeping in mind, an action verb, it tells us what the noun does, right? It's the action that the noun does, it's the doing word that the noun does, right? All right, so now it says we need to complete the sentence with the action verb. So we need to complete the sentence with the action verb. It says Miss Maxwell, do we say option one, time in the children's library? Or do we say Miss Maxwell, option two, works in the children's library? What is Miss Maxwell doing? Time in the children's library or works, option two, in the children's library? So which one is correct? So which one is correct? Miss Maxwell, time in the children's library, option one, or do we say Miss Maxwell works in the children's library, option two? All right, then if we were to choose the correct option, then we will say Miss Maxwell works, well done, in the children's library. So works is correct. Well done. The next one says Philip basketball, option one, higher than anyone else on the team. Or do we say Philip, option two, jumps higher than anyone else on the team? Which one is correct? That tells us what Philip is doing. Do we say Philip basketball or do we say Philip jumps? Which one is correct? Basketball or jumps? So which one is correct? Option one or option two? Philip basketball higher than anyone else on the team or Philip jumps higher than anyone else on the team? We need to give the correct option. All right, and if we were to choose the correct option, then yes, option two is correct. We'll say Philip jumps higher than anyone else on the team. Well done. Jumps is correct, which is option two. All right, the next one says Nina. Do we say Nina prize games with her sister? Or option two, Nina played games with her sister? Which one is correct? prize games with her sister? Or do we say Nina played games with her sister? We need to choose the correct one. All right. And if we were to choose the correct option, then yes, we can say Nina played games with her sister because it's telling us what she did. So she played games with her sister. Well done. The next one says, the lady, do we say option one, laughed when she won the prize? Or do we say option two, the lady first when she won the prize? So laughed, option one, or first, option two. What did the lady do? We need to say what the lady did. So option one, laughed, or option two, first. The lady, do we say laughed or the lady first when she won the prize? All right, and if we were to choose the correct option, then yes, we'll say the lady laughed when she won the prize. Well done. Laughed is correct. All right, let's look at the next one. It says, my sister, do we say my sister best the apple pie into eight pieces? Or do we say my sister cuts the apple pie into eight pieces? Which one is correct? All right, and if you were to choose the correct option, then yes, we will say, my sister cuts, well done, the apple pie into eight pieces. Well done. All right, now we're going to identify action verbs. And once again, action verbs, it tells you either what the noun is doing, tells us the action that the noun is doing, right? It's a doing word. It tells us what the noun, what the person, what the animal is doing, right? So now we're going to our test where we are going to identify the action verbs within a sentence. All right, we need to select the action verb, the action that is being done within the sentence. It says Eva buttoned her coat. Eva buttoned her coat. So now the question is, what is Eva doing? Or what did Eva do? Is it option one, buttoned her coat, or option two, coat, her coat? Which one is correct? Is it buttoned, option one, or coat, option two? Yes, and if you were to select the action verb, then Eva buttoned. Option one. It's something that she did, her coat. Well done. So buttoned is correct. Nicole pets the cat. Nicole pets the cat. So what is the action verb? Is it option one, pets, that tells us what Nicole does, or cats that tells us what Nicole does? Nicole pets the cats. Which one is correct? Try again. Remember, it is the action that she's doing. Remember, if you have an animal, right, and you are either rubbing the fur, then what do we call that? So if we want to say the action that tells us what Nicole did, then Nicole pets the cat. Remember, if you're petting the cat or petting a dog, then it means that you're rubbing the fur, rubbing the belly, holding the animal. You pet the cat, right? Because the cat is the noun. All right, then the last one says, Dad watered the garden. So now the question is, what did Dad do? Is it option one, watered, or option two, garden? Which one is correct? So Dad watered the garden. What is the option over there? And well done. We can then say option one, it tells us what Dad is doing. He watered the garden. Well done. So watered is correct. All right, so this is now the end of our lesson on action verbs. All right, we said action verbs are, it tells us what the noun is doing. It tells us the action that the noun is doing, right? It is a doing word. So well done. This is now the end of our lesson on action verbs. Thank you very much for joining, and I really hope you're going to have a good weekend further. So till next time, goodbye.